bringing the chaps to the stage, or want me to start?
We can go.
Okay, all right. It gives me great pleasure to welcome everyone here today. Such a great summit we're having so far. Bedrock, live in Sydney. That's great. Woohoo! But I'm going to talk about something very dear to my heart, and that's about sustainability and bringing that in connection with generative AI. My name's Simon Johnson. I've been with AWS well over 5.5 years now. I came over from the UK and Ireland to head up their go-to-market function on AI, and more recently into generative AI. Today I'm super excited. I'm going to have two super panelists, namely Budi from Sapia.ai and Ryan from Trust.ai, who I'll bring to the stage in a little while. And as a way as a background, I've been in the world of AI for around 25 years. I started off my career as a research engineer. We used to take mathematical models of different parts of neural networks, reverse engineer them, put them in MATLAB, and then look about putting them into technology called field programmable gate arrays, FPGAs for hardware acceleration. And that was long before the dawn of GPUs, and the world has really changed. But what's interesting, silicon hasn't gone away. Silicon and the choices in terms of cost to serve are very important for businesses to be successful today. So, a little bit of an overview. Firstly, I'll bring the panelists on board and have some introductions so you know who they are. And then I'm going to spend about 10 minutes just talking about sustainability in reference to generative AI. And then the last section, which will be about 30 minutes, we'll jump into the data and AI value chain. And we'll use this as a lens to look across the architectural and infrastructure decisions both of these two Australian trailblazers have selected in terms of them being successful and for them to be able to scale their technology as products in terms of their approach, a go-to-market perspective. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome both Ryan and Budi to stage. So Budi, we'll start with yourself. We met about 1.5 years ago. You were worried about large language models disrupting your business in some respects.
Yep.
Maybe just start off, tell us who is Sapia, what you do, a bit about your vision and mission, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization and your role, please.
Sure. Thanks, Simon. Morning, everyone. So my name is Budi Jaisuleka. So I'm the chief data scientist at Sapia. So Sapia is a conversational AI platform for hiring. So our flagship product is Chat Interview. It's a structured interview offered via chat, so organizations can do top of the funnel screening of candidates, especially when you have high volume of candidates. So large enterprises use us for that. So it offers a faster, fairer, and a more engaging way to hire people. So that's in a nutshell what we do. So that's much more than that, but that's in a nutshell our core offering. So I lead the Sapia Labs team, so that's the research team at Sapia. So we are responsible for the AI and all the innovations that we've been doing since 2018. So we are pre-ChatGPT, so we saw the value of conversational data. So this team consists of data scientists, organizational psychologists, and machine learning engineers, and HR professionals. So that's my team. And we'll talk about the solution maybe a little bit later on.
Awesome, thank you very much. Pleasure, thanks for joining us. Now, over to you, Ryan. I first met you in AWS, so he's an ex-colleague. You have a super cool station over here that you're demoing what you're doing with Amazon Connect, but maybe a little bit, who is Trust? When did you start? This generative AI technology is advancing so fast, and what's your role within Trust?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I've been with Trust now for going on 5 months, relatively early stage startup, but it's been growing at a rate of knots as a lot of these, as the space has evolved very rapidly in the recent times. I come from a very long background of 20 years in the customer experience space, as does my co-founder and some of the other team. My foray into the industry was in building out natural language processing applications, IVRs or interactive voice response solutions to help self-serve customer inquiries. some 20 years ago. A lot's changed since then. Technology's made it a lot easier for us to actually deliver on some of those experiences. Where Trust AI comes into this equation is we've taken the new technologies in generative AI, large language models, and we've built a platform that helps organizations really get to a root cause understanding of what's actually going on inside their, across all their customer engagement touch points. So when you think they're within their call centers and their contact centers, emails, web chats, complaints, survey data, any conversational based data, and we're really helping them understand insights into those conversations and those customer touch points, and giving them, with those insights, they're equipped to then be able to go and act on improving that customer experience. And in that process and in that journey of discovering what's going on, they can then resolve some of those reasons why customers are having to reach out to them. And ex-Amazonian, I'll drop in the Jeff Bezos quote of the best customer experience is when your customer doesn't need to contact you at all, it just works. So we're trying to help organizations understand so that they can resolve those problems proactively so that the customer doesn't need to actually contact them, because let's face it, no one wakes up in the morning and says, man, I can't wait to go and call my telco or go and call my bank or any call center for that matter. So we're really helping organizations with, as an AI first company, because we founded in the middle of last year, since the advent of, and since the generative AI technologies coming into the forefront. And using those technologies to achieve that.
Thank you very much, thank you. Well, post now introductions, I'm just going to jump into the session topic, and that's all about sustainable generative AI. And I thought I'd start off, I know you can't answer, but you can raise your hands. Who here is working on large language models and put these models into production? Just curious to see. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so there's a small percentage of the cohort here today. What I found is with a lot of customers that I work with today, you know, they're on this journey, and machine learning and generative AI is a journey, and there's a high degree of exploration, certainly in 2023. But in terms of moving into production, you can see it's not that easy sometimes in terms of the pathway. When we think about this same cohort of what the analysis was done on, you can see a lot more will stop doing the exploration and start moving into the piloting, both internally and externally within their organizations, and thinking about their end customer use cases. And then customers will want to really start pushing into production, because it's not until you get into production you get a return of investment, and that's what's key for customers. And the big question is, well, how do I get into production? When we continue this trend, I think it's interesting that you see there'll be, again, a big push then into really demonstrating this technology externally to certain key customer groupings, and then moving into production. But ultimately, there's a pathway and a journey that customers have to go on, and it's really interesting to see when we double click on the journey that both Trust and Sapia have taken in terms of getting these models into production and thinking about key elements. So if we take this sustainability formula, what do we think is the key elements we want to consider? Well, firstly, obviously, there's a lot of demand and a lot of experimentation that customers are doing. I don't know one customer that I have not spoken to in the last 6 months isn't doing some form of experimentation with generative AI. So there's going to be an increased demand. But what does this mean from the basic elements underneath? So 1, there's going to be an increase in the number of models. 2, there's going to be an increase in the model size as well, even in both proprietary and open source models. And 3, there's going to be an increase in the conditions that you may put on these models, which we could touch upon a little bit more. But ultimately, from a business perspective, what does that mean? It means there's going to be an increase of cost to you as an organization to put these models into production. And what's directly proportional to this is also energy usage. And I'll double click on this a little bit more. So as we know, the size of the models are getting bigger, and we look at these model sizes by the number of parameters that they have. Effectively, that means a larger neural network. A larger neural network means larger number of compute to manage all the multiplications that's required in these neural networks. The other point we mentioned is about the number of choices out here. And you'll hear from Budi later in terms of how he uses Bedrock in terms of rapid experimentation. But it does mean that there's a lot of choice out there as customers. So you need to think about the selection and the evaluation of these models, because each of these models has specific capabilities compared to the others. So you have to select the right model for the right use case. A framework that I wanted to use is, I'm borrowing this from Dr. Werner Vogels, our CTO from AWS. And in one sense, when I talk about 2023 being a year of high experimentation and exploration, we have the passionate architect. This is an individual that's went and select probably the largest model out there, which means the most expensive model out there, built a proof of concept, and then has went around looking to demonstrate this technology within the organization. And what we're finding is this is a very unsuccessful approach of putting these models into production. When you look at an alternative approach as the frugal architect, what they've done is up front, they've put a little bit of effort in, and they've looked at, what's the use case and how it's aligned to certain business key stakeholders. With that, they've also looked at what's the return of investment of the specific use case, looking at both economics, and then what's the total cost of ownership at an architectural level to execute this technology and scale this technology. So that's forced them to evaluate and select the correct LLM to be successful for the specific use case that they're targeting. With that, once they demonstrate that to the lines of business that they have connected with and agreed with that that's what they want, with a sustainability factor built in, you can then see it's going to be a much more successful proof of value rather than proof of concept in terms of your strategy for path to production. Ultimately, we have a flywheel concept in Amazon, and what we're looking at is, one hand, you've got lots of different use cases that you have to prioritize. On the other hand, you're going to have lots of data and foundation models that you have to select based on the use case that you're going after. And then you have to think about how you're going to scale this piece of technology within your organization. So the prioritization, the stress testing of the model in terms of the evaluation and selection, and then thinking of how this demonstrates from a proof of value and then a proof of scale within your organization are all key elements to be successful with the technology. And that's just the technology. Obviously there's other elements such as process and people that customers need to think about to be successful. So here's a concept. How about you could select a much smaller model? How about you could optimize or put the correct conditions in that model? It may be through your prompt engineering, to chain of thought. It may be using some fine tuning with your own data, or it may be this RAG solution you may have heard of, retrieval augmented generation, where you as a customer can take your data, put it into a vector database, and the LLM will only return answers based on that. And if you take that approach and you're able to give the same performance as one of these larger language models from a zero-shot perspective, what's interesting is that you now have a model from a cost to serve perspective is much cheaper. It has better latency, and overall, from an economics perspective, it makes sense from a business to do that. So what's the key features of selection you have to think about? Generally, people will look at these elements in terms of speed, accuracy, and cost, and ultimately, this will link up to sustainability of this. A key question could be, from a measure of success, how much carbon footprint does your chatbot technology have within your organization? And these are key questions that people are going to start to ask in the future. What we are starting to see is in terms of this model selection of intelligence v cost, again, based on the type of use case that you want to go for. So if you want a basic chat or extraction and classification, we could superimpose, as an example, Anthropic, the Claude 3 family. Maybe you start off with Haiku here as a model that is suitable for these specific use cases and will have the lowest cost to serve in terms of what you want to do from an execution perspective and give you the scale economics. You then may want to go up this curve for more advanced use cases for search and retrieval, like your RAG solutions, and more advanced analytics. You may want a Sonnet model from the Claude 3 family. Or if you want more reasoning capability, agents and other tool use, you may want to use Opus as a model as an example. but the cost to use these models will be different. So back to the frugal architect philosophy, you really need to think about what's the use case you're going after and what's the cost to serve. So ultimately, bringing back around to my career 25 years ago, silicon does matter. If you can take this task-specific approach, you can go for a much smaller model, you can optimize it with your data as a customer to give you a much more accurate approach and reduce the cost. If you then can run this on custom silicon, for example from Amazon, which again will reduce the cost to serve, and then you can run this in data centers in Australia that's powered by green energy. I propose that as one of the most sustainable approaches to generative AI you can do today as customers. So with that, my little 10 minutes of an Irishman talking very passionately about sustainable generative AI, we're going to move into the next section, and that's the data and AI value chain. I think this is a really cool lens that you can use in your organizations to think about how you make your investments and how you standardize on your choice of technologies within your organizations. It obviously starts at the very bottom with this foundation layer, and that's not only just the compute from EC2, but it's also thinking about your storage decisions, your vector database decisions you may make, and then we move up the chain in terms of the foundation model layer, and that would be what tools you want to select and what models you want to standardize on to allow you then to provide these applications and generative AI capabilities and how you serve them from a B2C, a B2B, or a B2B2C. So with that in mind, what I've done, I've taken the liberty, gentlemen, to superimposing some of the architectural decisions you've made. Hopefully I haven't made any little mistakes, and I thought we'd have some fun. So let's start bottom of the stack, Budi. When we look at the choices you've made here in terms of your compute and some of the things you've made from a warehouse perspective and storage perspective, could you help me understand, what was the strategy or logic behind these decisions, and at a foundational layer, what does that mean to your organization and these technology choices that you've made from an architectural perspective?
Yes, a great question. So I would put it under 4 categories, like the decisions that led to this. So the first thing is where we are in our journey, like you mentioned the journey, that matters a lot. Journey as in the sense, the data availability. How much of specialized data or domain specific data do we have? The second thing is the use cases that we want to go after.
Yeah.
The third one would be the expertise in-house to do some of this work, the skills. And the fourth one is obviously cost. So these models that we are now fine-tuning, like Llama 2, these are not the first large language models that we fine-tuned. So our existing generation is based on a fine-tuned version of Google's BERT. It was a large language model, not compared to the billion parameter, it's 110 million parameters. So we are used to fine-tuning these models because we have a very specialized conversational data set. Because we conduct interviews, we have question-answer pairs so that we can use to fine-tune these models. So some of these foundational decisions were already being made because we already fine-tuned some of those things.
Yeah.
But then use cases matter. Given that we have the data, we wanted to have more flexibility in how we fine-tune these models. So rather than using an existing model that's offered via maybe Bedrock, I'll come to the value of that later, but we wanted to fine-tune an open source model.
Yes.
And S3, for example, is given it's maybe the most platform agnostic storage that's available in AWS, and it's cost effective, so that's where most of our data lies, given it's very large language data set. So we have right now 1.6 billion words that's shared by 3.7 million candidates. So it's a large data set that we are using to fine-tune these models.
Yeah.
So some of that led to those foundational level decisions. And we also do experiment a lot.
Yeah.
And one of those was building a RAG solution.
Yeah.
So that's linked to the use case. So if you take the use case, so we got to figure out like what use cases will bring us value. It's not a matter of like doing it for fun. Okay, here's some large language model, let's do something with it. But we got to see like, okay, what is really aligned to what we are doing. So we are really about responsible AI, building responsible AI for recruitment, and then defining use cases. One of those was to build a careers chatbot that's able to help out before the interview process starts. So when you come to a career site, you might have some questions. Typically, you'll go around searching for stuff, but instead, can we provide essentially a RAG solution?
Yeah.
So for that, we used OpenSearch
Okay.
as the underlying vector store,
Yeah.
and played with the Bedrock's Claude
Yeah.
model.
Yeah. Cool.
So you can see how the use case mattered. Expertise matters because you need the right expertise to fine-tune these models.
Yeah.
So understanding of responsible building responsible AI solutions, bias testing, and all of that. So within our team, we've had that built up for a while.
Yeah,
So expertise is also part of the decision-making process.
interesting. So the use cases at the very top is determining, at the very
Correct.
bottom,
Correct.
some of your architectural decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of the use cases we wouldn't go into because if we find that they are not really a responsible use of AI or we don't have the expertise to do it properly,
Yeah,
we won't go into those use cases.
interesting. Yeah. And you think that would be a tactic or a strategy for other businesses that maybe aren't Sapia.ai, but in terms of how they prioritize their use cases, in terms of what technology choices they would want to make?
I would say so. Like if you maybe abstract the use cases a little bit, I see three buckets that things fall into, like
Yeah.
at abstract level. So one is where you just use a solution like design pattern like RAG,
Mm-hmm.
where you only need access to a data set. You don't need any fine tuning or anything. It's a very straightforward solution. I think Bedrock is offering all the components to build a RAG solution really well, and we utilized all of that. And that's one use case, like that will fit into that kind of pattern. The second one would be where you just do prompt engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So experiment, but come up with the right prompts to do some work. The third one would be the more fine tuning with either supervised or pre-training fine tuning.
Yeah.
So that requires your own proprietary domain-specific data set, and that's what we have. And therefore, we had to go to the most bottom level layer because we were kind of building just on top of an existing open source model and doing all the fine tuning and hosting and all of that on our own.
Yeah, so you're really going beyond the consumption of these models, because once you go into capturing your own data, which is an asset on itself, and customers are struggling to capture data.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting. And Ryan, I'm going to jump over to you now, buddy.
Yeah.
In terms of trust.ai, again, sort of the same question, but like, you've been newer to, you're newer kid in the block than Sapia.ai from that perspective, and some of the decisions you've made. Curious to just understand the strategy or logic behind that as well.
Yeah, so not dissimilar to what Buddy just described. Obviously, we're very focused in the customer experience space, and that's our niche and focus on that. But working backwards from the various different use cases, and you can imagine within customer experience, there's a plethora of use case subsets within that. When you look at the compute layer and some of the decisions we've made around that, they've been very much driven by those use cases. And as we've broadened out those solutions within the platform, I even noticed in the diagram there's some previous iterations of the models running some of the G5 12x large when we were using much larger models, and as we've optimized, we've been able to reduce the amount of compute required. With some of our customers, we have a lot of customers in the telco space and utilities, health science, and that. They've been very cautious about data. Our solution runs, our Trust GPT platform runs in the customer's AWS account, so we have to be very cognizant of that fact. So cost has always been a key factor of consideration. And as we've continued to optimize for cost and for performance, and going back to your previous slide around sustainability, we've targeted to reduce that, and we've even got now to the point, especially with Bedrock being available in region, with our customers, we haven't had as many customers who are willing to go and use Bedrock offshore, but now that's available in Sydney, we can actually start getting down to using different models for very distinct areas within our platform. So for certain questions about the data, the conversational data, we're actually using different prompts based on the insights that we're trying to extract.
Yeah.
So we're getting super descriptive or distinct around which models we're selecting for that. It all goes to adaptability of the platform, because every business is different, every use case is different. and we work backwards from those use cases to make sure that we give the customer the flexibility to use the most
Yeah.
optimal model for that. And then working up the data stack, we're using Redshift serverless, and that's been from obviously there's query performance and that side of things considered for that decision. But also because a lot of our customers look to us to accelerate their AI adoption journey and get into a production workload. And in our case, you go and subscribe in Marketplace, 45 minutes later it's in your AWS account, and you can start ingesting all these data sources, but then you can imagine there's a breadth of data that is an output of all of the analytics of your conversations, and it's extremely rich data around what are your customers complaining about, where are there areas of improvement within your products and services that you're offering your customers, business process enhancements. All of these things are extremely valuable to various different divisions within the organization. So Redshift was a great choice for us and our customers, because then their data science teams and their data engineers can get at that data very easily within their account, and obviously being secured in their AWS account, it's not exposed to any other parties, but it gives them flexibility to get that and use it for other extended use cases within their organization.
Cool.
But think marketing, think product design, product optimization, etc.
Yeah. I'll come back to some of the points you made, because you've talked about data sovereignty, you've talked about the selection of what type of approach you want to take from a vector database perspective, which is interesting. But that's data, it's boring. What we want to talk about is generative AI. So let's move up to the exciting part. When we talk about this layer of model and platform layer, and I split it out for just the exploration and the conversation today.
Sure.
You both started your journey, I would say, on Amazon SageMaker, keep me right on that, and then you've started to play with Bedrock, and you've taken a very, I wouldn't say model agnostic per se, but there's a lot of broad range of models, back to this selection and evaluation that you've done. So maybe, Budi, I'll jump back to yourself. So, you've SageMaker in production.
Yep.
Bedrock you're using for rapid experimentation right now, but
Mostly, yes.
take me through the strategy there, please.
Yeah, so it also goes back to a bit of the data sovereignty aspect because of the proprietary data set that we have. So we've always been we preferred in-house building or fine-tuning of models. So we've not shared our data set with any external services. So in that, we wanted to fine-tune an open source model than sharing it with the service. So in that way, SageMaker helped a lot. So we could use SageMaker Studio. We are heavy users of SageMaker Studio, all the things out there like with Data Wrangler, the feature store and etc. We started with fine-tuning Falcon, last year. But then Meta released Llama 2, clearly, better performance.
So you told your team, stop working on that, now work on this one.
So we had to commit and we read the Meta paper, and we found the amount of effort that they had gone through to build a more responsible model. Not to say Falcon wasn't, but we found that it was a better fit. And we have now built our fine-tuned version based on Llama 2. Maybe I'll talk about it later. For that, we use SageMaker.
Okay.
But at the same time, we experiment a lot. For example, if you to start with, you need to experiment with the baseline performance of a model. What does the base model give us?
Zero shot.
Zero, exactly. So for that, Bedrock services, especially now with Llama available, it's been very easy to kind of call that endpoint. It's cost effective. You are only paying for the tokens, right? And that data is not sensitive data in the experiments, so we are not sharing anything sensitive. And also, we started building a RAG solution, like I said earlier, the career coach solution. So for that, we use the Claude that's offered on Bedrock. That was an easy choice. We didn't have to host anything. Again, per token, we started using Claude, and Claude was the choice, better choice, given their Anthropic's focus on responsible AI. It really aligned with our thinking. Their constitutional AI, based building of the model. So Bedrock gave us that advantage. I think that's the rapid experimentation.
Yeah, and consumption.
Exactly.
Because what time period did it take to go from Falcon to Llama on SageMaker versus you changing models now in Bedrock?
I I think with Falcon we only can, again, it was in the early stages. Maybe it was few months
Yeah,
since Llama
yeah,
was released,
yeah,
and then we committed to the Llama model,
yeah,
7 billion model to fine tune,
yeah,
which was done on SageMaker. But Bedrock has been our choice for experimentation.
yeah,
So I think that's something that I'll tell everyone. Especially if you want to just go and start calling one of these models, just use Bedrock,
yeah,
right? But when you build your own solution, that's a choice that you make. Do you want to, you know, do you want to kind of have that control over how you fine tune things?
yep,
Full kind of control over the stack.
mm,
So that's a choice that you make. So
yep,
in our case, we want to have the control.
yep,
So therefore, we are fine tuning and hosting it on our own.
yep,
But Bedrock has been really useful in the
yeah. I
rapid.
think it's what interesting you mentioned as well, like from the democratization of the technology. It's just not about, well, you've lots of models you can select now, but also you talked about building RAG solutions.
Yep.
There's new features such as guardrails, agents,
Yes.
stuff like that there.
Yep.
That heavy lift, I don't differentiate heavy lift as we talk about it, that must be good for product development as well, because as moving from a startup to more of a scale up, you're going to have a lot of competition.
Yes. Yes. It's interesting. So our data science team started playing with the RAG solution. So when we started, Bedrock didn't have the guardrails.
Yeah,
So we actually used a separate library from NVIDIA,
Yeah.
NVIDIA guardrails, and then Bedrock released their own guardrails.
yeah,
So I mean, it's good. Bedrock is catching up and it's offering now there's agents.
Yeah.
That's another one. So it clearly gives you a platform to rapidly prototype and evaluate. But they could also definitely go to production. But that depends on how you
Yeah.
think about your own product.
yeah,
But in this kind of environment, rapid experimenting is really important,
yeah,
because especially in our case, when we build responsible AI solutions, we just don't want to start, just pick something and go out to the market. We
Yeah.
want to make sure we understand how these models behave, do enough experiments,
Yeah.
and that is enabled by services like Bedrock and even Jumpstart.
yeah.
Clearly Bedrock is more economical in that sense than hosting
yeah.
it on Jumpstart.
Awesome, awesome. And Ryan, I'm actually getting afraid to talk to you because every time I talk to you, like you've changed the technology so much. So when we first spoke about it, about 2 months ago, you'd standardized on SageMaker, and now, I spoke to you last week, and you're going, "No, we're using Bedrock for most of these applications now, and there's some other, bespoke technology we're still using SageMaker for." So help me understand this.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving world, Simon, as you know all too well. We're still using SageMaker for a number of our use cases. So we have a real-time transcription and translation engine, which we run on SageMaker in the customer's account. We've got customers across Asia Pacific and Japan with a diverse range of languages, and you can imagine there's the need to fine-tune and adapt those models specifically to certain use cases in other languages. So SageMaker has been a great fit for that solution, and you'll see some of the MLG4D and X-Large instance types in there, which we're using for that. When we look at the insight generation side of things, and with Claude and some of the newer models being made available on Bedrock, we did a broad evaluation across models available, both open source models in SageMaker, and then also evaluated and compared those against what was available out of Bedrock.
Yep.
And coming back to cost being one of those non-functional requirements, speaking
Yep.
about the frugal architect earlier, we found that we could get better results at a much lower cost point for that use case, and improve the business case
Yeah,
for those. So one of the exciting things with Bedrock being available in Sydney now, for those customers who we were seeing a bit of resistance from because of data sovereignty and these sort of things, those have gone away now. So now we're excited, and even at the booth we've switched that over to start using Bedrock in Sydney region, and customers have shown a lot of excitement about that. But what Bedrock is also given is that flexibility in for not just on a use case basis, but even within certain use cases.
Yeah.
And I touched on it a bit earlier. If you want a pretty verbose response, and you want to get a more detailed paraphrasing of what the conversation was about, or synopsis of what the conversation is about, certain models provide a better, richer output. And then we look at using those on Bedrock. But in the same conversation, we can go and get other insights like rankings and that with different models. Where Mistral and some of their models have been really good for some of those use cases. So it just it's given us that level of flexibility within our use cases to be able to switch between different models, experiment, what you mentioned.
Yep.
And evaluate. Bedrock's got some great evaluation capabilities as well, which we've found really useful. And obviously I come from a CX background, and Buddy's very strong in the data science side of things. We've got some really smart data scientists to help us execute on that side as well.
Well, look, I'm going to change tack now. We've talked about technology. Curious about strategy, skills, and sustainability. So you both have teams that you look after. So at an organizational level, how do you embed or instill these practices to make sure, if we borrow this frugal architect approach or lens, how do you make sure you embed that within your organization? Budi or Ryan, in terms of your decision-making process, how you would optimize, and you think about the skills you need now to the skills in the future. Just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think. So I was there at the keynote speech of Werner Vogel's last year. So one of the things he said, one of the quotes that really hit the goal was, cost is a close proxy of sustainability. He had this line, which really makes sense. So I think, I'm lucky to be working with the engineering team, machine learning, as well as the general engineering team, who's been, from day one, they've been thinking about cost.
Yeah.
And that's where AWS has helped a lot in that aspect. So cost is always, as a startup, it's not like you don't have all the resources in the world, so you have to be really cost conscious.
Yep.
And we've taken, every step we can to reduce costs. And I think it applies to the machine learning, model building, to generative AI now. Cost is always there. We are cost conscious. So it relates back to the earlier point you made around like which models to use, because that drives the cost a lot. Like the largest model is not the always the best model.
Yep.
So in our case, if you take the two use cases, I keep the RAG solution aside, but the other one where I said we fine-tuned Llama. So we are, that fine-tuned model is not used as a conversational model. So it's used for a very specific task of evaluating interview responses and providing explanations. So you can see it's the model is being used. It's like, having this person who is a very specialized interview evaluator. That's it. It's not a conversation system. So when you reduce it to that sort of like specific task, you don't need the largest model in the world to do it. And especially if you fine tune it with a very specialized data set. So we found the 7 billion model was more than enough to do that. So the results are amazing. So you're able to now not only score somebody, but the model will explain the score that you will never get from a human interviewer. If I ask you like, why did you think that person is very high on critical thinking, it's very hard for a human interviewer to give an explanation consistently, whereas the model follows a rubric and provides a very consistent explanation.
That rubric, that's like an assessment process you have in your team?
Yes, so the rubric is defined by a domain expert, in our case the organizational psychologists who are experts in that domain. So they define, so they define, so essentially the model is following that subject matter expert's prompt, and we fine-tuned it with our data, so it provides an explanation in every, whether it's million candidates or 10 candidates, it's able to provide explanation. So that's where we are using it. So for that very specialized task, you don't need the largest, 70 billion, 100 billion parameter model. So that's part of our thinking. And the skills part of it, I would say, the team, obviously you need the machine learning, deep learning skills, but an area that we've been very kind of like focused on is responsible development of models, ethical AI. We've been building frameworks like since 2019 around how to build responsible AI solutions. So we have now productized them. So that kind of knowledge around how to think about bias in a model,
Yeah.
so that's a skill that you need, especially when you're working with large
It
language
should
models.
definitely be the topic of our next session. From
Correct.
that perspective. I
Correct.
love it.
Yes.
What about yourself, Ryan? Just same sort of question, and then we will wrap up with one last question.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier around using using the model that's fit for purpose for the specific use case or for the specific insight that we're looking to get out of the conversations. We've just released at Summit this week, we've released the conversational interface where you can go and interrogate the data that is being produced. So you can go and start asking questions like, which product were my customers complaining about the most? Who are my best performing?
Customers don't complain. What do you right?
Yeah, so with that, we looked at out of all the models and ways of engaging with those models, we looked at models on SageMaker, we looked at models across Bedrock, and the team evaluated for cost and performance and speed, to your triangle earlier, looking at optimizing that for each specific use case. And with the conversational interface, we're using Bedrock to actually go and leverage some of the Claude models that are available on that.
Awesome. Well, look, we've 3 minutes left, so I have one question for you each. I'm going to be a bit cheeky. There's 3 elements of this question, but love to know roadmap. Like, what's next? What's the big thing that you are working on? 2, are you hiring? Maybe some people here are curious for jobs. And 3, if there's one takeaway you could leave with the audience today, what would that be? Start with you, Budi.
Right, what I'm really excited about, so the new large language model we built, I just mentioned earlier, that's able to evaluate interviews and provide explanations.
Yeah.
Really excited about that, so we are piloting it right now. And once you have that, you could see how that can be applied for various other use cases, for coaching, and figuring out interview questions, figuring out the real DNA of a role. So all that is available. Right?
Yeah.
So you can use these generative AI kind of models to assist the human hiring managers throughout the process. So I'm really excited about that.
So it augments through the whole
Correct.
journey.
Yes, and it's very human-like, because these are now, if you take previous, generations of models, they might give a score, they might give something, it's not able to give it in a natural language,
Yeah.
format.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now these ones are able to give you that in a natural language format. Very engaging. So really excited about that. It's taking our platform to the next level.
Are you hiring?
Not right now.
Not
Not right now. So
Okay.
I mean, let's see how at the moment.
Okay.
We are hiring on our go-to-market team,
Okay.
but not on the data science or people science or the experiment side.
One takeaway you give to the audience?
Experiment. I think that's my take. Experiment. These things are there. Like
I think you said experiment in Bedrock, didn't you?
I didn't put
Doing a
that.
hard sell. And over to Ryan, last minute.
Yeah, so something that's really exciting that I'm looking forward to progressing in the next couple of months is our trust-based routing capabilities. So now that we understand what customers are speaking to organizations about, and what's working and what's not working, and who, if it does ultimately end up with a human being, who the best person is for that particular contact, and being able to use that in the routing logic to get it to the best person that it has a track record of resolving that specific problem with the best outcome. And then another area is just expanding our AI flows, where with those insights, as we come to know about certain things that are occurring within the business, we can actually go and autonomously act on those insights.
3 seconds. Are you hiring?
Yes, we are actively.
Okay. So go over the booth if you want a job. Trust AI. Yeah. With that, I would really like to thank you both for coming along. Budi, you flew up from Melbourne. You were up as well from Melbourne. So it's great to have you up here. 2 local startups, trailblazers in Australia, for the rest of the world. Task-specific, sustainable models. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
There we go.
Please